Welcome back to Power and Politics. Earlier in the program, just before the break, in fact, we heard from the Parliamentary Budget Officer, Kevin Page, his interpretation of the Truth in Sentencing Act. According to his report, the government's new tough on crime agenda will cost you an additional $5 billion, $1 billion over the next 5 years to cover the elimination of this 2-for-1 credit. But did the Conservatives carefully consider all the implications of these costs? His reaction to the PBO, Kevin Page's report. I'm now joined by Vic Toews. He's the Minister of Public Safety. Minister, always good to see you. How are you?
And you, very good.
All right, now you just hear Kevin Page there, and the highlight is the Parliamentary Budget Officer does a study. He said it's going to cost the federal government $1 billion a year over 5 years, over $5 billion, compared to the numbers that he's hearing from you and the government, which is first $93 million, then $2 billion. And he says, frankly, there's a huge discrepancy, and I can't figure out why, because the government is not giving us any details of where they're getting their numbers. How do you respond?
Well, in fact, I understand from the agency, Correction Services of Canada, that they have, in fact, cooperated with Mr. Page, so I don't understand his inability to access numbers. The numbers that have been provided to me is from the budget. First of all, it's $89 million been appropriated for the first year, but over the course of 5 years, as the legislation ramps up, it'll work out to about $2 billion a year. $2 billion over those 5 years. The numbers also have to be seen in a very particular context. The cost of crime to Canadians is $70 billion a year. That's the amount of money that it costs Canadians. We believe that the investment that we're making to put repeat offenders, dangerous, repeat, chronic offenders in prison is well worth the cost to Canadians. We're prepared to pay it.
But still, there's a discrepancy here of $3 billion. He's saying it's going to cost you $5 billion, and they've crunched the numbers. And by the way, we can get at where he got the numbers in a second. You're still saying $2 billion. Why is there a discrepancy between the Parliamentary Budget Officer and the government? Again, he's saying, show me how you're getting the $2 billion figure, because he says, I can't figure out how they've come up with it.
He can go and speak to Correction Services of Canada to get those numbers. What he also...
So you're
I get my numbers from Correction Services Canada.
He says that he had very difficult time accessing any numbers from Correctional Services Canada. I asked him if he was being stonewalled. He said he had meetings canceled and they simply couldn't get access to the primary doctors.
I understand we have a paper trail indicating the cooperation between Correction Services Canada and Mr. Page. So I quite frankly don't know what he's talking about. If there are issues in that respect, I'll look into it. But the point is that here's an individual who's said that he can't access the numbers. Now he's saying it costs $5 billion.
Well, he said he's getting at public access documents. But let's say we agree that he did have access to the numbers from Correctional Services Canada. He says he had trouble. Even if he did, he's come up with a $5 billion figure, and the government has come up with a $2 billion figure.
Well,
so,
look,
I mean, this is a big line item, right? It's a big line item in the budget.
We can talk about those discrepancies. I'm prepared to rely on the numbers that I've received from the Correction Services of Canada. Quite frankly, I think that the numbers that we have put forward, the $2 billion, is a reasonable amount of money over the 5 years in order to deal with these chronic offenders. We want to change the prison system from a revolving door system. One of the things that Mr. Page hasn't taken into account at all are the savings to Canadians in respect of the court system. What we're dealing with is not a whole bunch of new prisoners. We're dealing with the same chronic offenders day in, day out, who view the court system and the prison system as a revolving door system.
But he's saying 3,700 new inmates.
Well, again, the issue is, where do you get 3,700 new inmates from? We're dealing with the same individuals who, instead of being locked up every number of months, a new trial, released on early parole, and then caught for another crime and resentenced. What we're eliminating is all of the costs in terms of the court system, in terms of the prosecutors, the legal aid lawyers, the sheriff's officers, the police officers, the time that they've spent.
But this is why I'm trying to. If the issue here is transparency of information, if the public needs to have a fair debate about this, and you've always been very good enough to come on, but you know, you look through the budget, we don't have line items in the budget from a plans and priorities or an operational level. I mean, you talk about the $83 million for 89 million as an appropriation, but you know, if we're talking about billions of dollars and a discrepancy now of $3 billion, why not publish all these numbers so the public can have a fair debate about these?
Well, I'm certainly prepared to put numbers forward when we have the numbers, but this is an individual who said it was going to cost $10 billion. Now he's saying it costs $5 billion. I quite frankly don't know where he's getting his numbers from. So all I'm prepared to say is our estimates are $2 billion. We're moving to get rid of certain chronic offenders in the court system who, instead of being released on a regular basis on parole, are in fact kept behind bars because they continue to reoffend.
I want to just cover two more topics, obviously the G8 and the G20. Yesterday, Peter Mansbridge, our senior correspondent, had a very rare interview with the head of the CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. And I just want to show you this interesting clip.
Sure.
This is Mr. Fadden from CSIS and talking to Peter Mansbridge.
Is there chatter out there?
Actually, I think surprisingly little on the terrorism front. We don't think there is anyone who's really interested in doing any harm from that perspective. On the other hand, anarchist groups, multi-issue extremists, yes, there is. There's a fair bit. And we've tried very hard over the course of the last year, 18 months, to pull together some intelligence that will help the RCMP deal with any breaches of the law that might occur.
When you say a fair bit, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, it's Toronto, it's the summer. Nothing attracts the world media like the G8 and the G20. So anyone who's interested in getting their issues in front of the public, I think, are interested in being in Toronto. So do I mean that there are untold thousands? No, I don't, but a substantial number of people.
So, Minister, I guess there's been so much debate about the cost of security for this. Here's the head of CSIS, and he's saying there's surprisingly little threat on the terrorism front. What does that tell us about the cost of this?
I think what you have to indicate is what he defines as terrorist. He also indicated extremists and anarchists. On the other hand, there's quite a bit of chatter. These individuals are not without their threats. If you're suggesting that, gee, we've been listening to telephone conversations and there doesn't seem to be enough chatter, why don't we just shut down security? I would say that would be a very foolish move. I am briefed regularly by Mr. Fadden. I'm briefed regularly by the RCMP. I'm quite satisfied that the initial advice that I received when I came into this portfolio in February, that the steps taken are necessary, prudent, and essential for the safety of world leaders.
You know, we talked to a guy named John Clark. He's the founder of the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty. He's planning to protest. He says that when Stockwell Day came on this show and called protesters violent anarchists and thugs, that it was provocative and it may be meant to provoke some competition. I just want to show you his clip and get your take. This is the kind of person that we're going to see at the G8 and the G20.
Well, that would seem to me to be the words of a man who is looking to engineer a confrontation, or at least will not be particularly disappointed if one happens, which is rather an astounding position. One would have thought that this showpiece international event, they would at least want it to come off in a fairly respectable and sedate way, but it may be that the build-up of security is not entirely preventive, that there's part of their political agenda that actually would welcome a confrontation.
I mean, what do you make of that? He's saying those provocative...
His analysis?
His analysis.
His analysis is fairly extreme. I have better things to do than to provoke individuals. I've been a firm supporter of individuals who have a right to demonstrate, a right to protest, as long as they do it non-violently. Am I looking to provoke violence in order to make a political agenda? Absolutely not. That's an irresponsible comment of that individual to make.
And was it responsible of Minister Day to characterize protesters as violent anarchists and thugs, or is there a difference here?
I don't know who he was referring to. I know that there are thugs and violent anarchists. I don't know that individual from a hole in the ground. I assume he looks to be a decent, law-abiding citizen. I have no concerns until there's a credible threat. Do we worry about individuals?
Minister Toews, you've always been good with your time and another wide-ranging interview today and a couple of issues. Your file's been very busy. It's a busy summer for you. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.